Hey, Catherine,
Hey, Martin.
whenever I go to restaurants and look at the wine list, all my friends are always telling me I'm just too frugal. I'm just not buying it.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
Hello and welcome to The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot button topics in the wine and food world. I'm your host, Catherine Cole, joined by co-host Martin Reyes, master of wine, international wine consultant, importer, winemaker, and educator. Hello, Martin.
Hey, Catherine, how are you doing?
Pretty good. I'm excited to record this episode with you. It's going to be our coming to terms with luxury episode, in which we grapple with the fact that we all work in a luxury business and discuss all the uncomfortable implications of this. Our panelists are Anna-Christina Cabrales, Education and Innovation Manager at Independence Wine and Spirits, founder of Sommation, an inclusive Instagram wine community, and a wine educator. Hello, Anna-Christina.
Hi, how are you?
Good. And Cristie Norman, Wine Enthusiast Wine Educator of the Year, President and Co-founder, the United Sommeliers Foundation, and a lot of other things besides. Hello, Cristie.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Well, let's serve up the first part of our conversation. Wine is by definition a luxury because it is not a necessity. But it's also a Veblen good. This is a term I learned from Martin, and that's spelled Veblen. And that is a term for a product for which demand increases because the price has gone up rather than the price going up in response to demand. So Anna-Christina, I thought I would start with you because I know you worked in finance prior to entering the wine industry, and I think you know more about this stuff than I do. And you also work with high-end wines. So how do you explain the stratospheric prices of certain wines and what drives these prices?
Well, let's take one step backwards here. This term stratospheric, let's define that. What are we talking about here? $50, $100, $500, $1,000? What's stratospheric? Let's create some guidelines or baselines here, rather.
$18,000.
Right on, that's stratospheric.
It's a very expensive bottle of wine. It's the most expensive one that we had at the list at Spago. That's why I say that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example, Anna-Christina. I happen to know about a new Napa wine label that is debuting at $1,000 a bottle.
Okay. I like that number.
No one's ever
I
heard
like
of it
that
before.
number as a baseline for stratospheric because, it's out there who, really goes and buys like $1,000 anything on a daily basis. I think we can draw some lines in the sand here. So a couple of different things can affect prices on wine, but largely it's really supply and demand on two levels, really. We're dealing with agricultural product here. And so we're basically at the mercy of each vintage. Some are good years, some are bad years, and that will yield a certain amount. And based on that amount, we also have supply and demand coming from a more consumer level where, well, who's really interested and how much is there of it? And that'll also, affect the pricing of that. And some other factors that can also affect it is real estate. From even ages ago, we have monks who are searching for the best plots of land. Until this day, everyone is still searching for what those are, wherever they might be, especially in developing regions where they have consultants essentially that are still looking for the best plots in these areas. For example, in China is a great example of that. And just like here in New York, everyone wants the best address. They want the best real estate because it yields something. And I think in the long term, what that is, it's like prestige, a certain statement. It also means a level of perhaps consistency. And let's be real, like money that's backed behind it to really boost its image up as well. But that being said, there's a flip side to all of this as well. Even with wines that are out there, meaning current release wines, sometimes, like even though the market sets it, the wines don't hold its price, especially when we're dealing with the auction world. There's a lot of different moving factors, especially when it comes to luxury wine, that can really affect its price. It can even just be us here. If we tomorrow said, as sommeliers, this wine, whatever it should be, fake wine A, B, and C, is the best thing on the face of this planet, we can drive up prices as well, especially if there's short demand. So there's a lot of factors there.
Yeah, it's not like tinfoil that you buy at the store, you know. There's a limited quantity of it, and we're at the mercy of nature and how expensive Napa is getting. $1,000 for a bottle of Napa does not seem that outrageous to me because of how astronomically high the real estate has become, you know?
Right on.
It's like they need to make money. So I feel like if that's what their bottom line is, you know, to make money, I'm sure it probably is pushed a little bit because they want it to be in that luxury space. But especially fruit from Napa or some of these kind of big ticket, recognizable global regions. Yeah, it doesn't seem that crazy to me. I can understand it, especially if it's a newer winery.
Anna, you mentioned that the fine wine auction market can make prices change. That makes me think, wine is like art in a way. It seems like it's something sort of semi-unrelated, like an auction market and sort of craze over an item that can make the price go up or down. Do you all ever feel like there's an emperor has no clothes kind of situation where a wine is priced at some price like $1,000 a bottle and it really just isn't that good?
I think at that point it's all about preferences, right? I mean, wine is at the end of the day still a good. You pay for it. It's the same thing as to why you would, buy 82-cent tomatoes versus San Marzano tomatoes. There's a distinction. There is a sensibility and a preference for one thing over another. And if you feel that $1,000 bottle of wine brings you that level of pleasure, which is super subjective from one person to the next, then go for it.
Well, Cristie, when you were working the floor at Spago, did you feel like people would choose the more expensive wine because they wanted just the joy of spending that much and having the feeling like they were splurging?
Or was it prestige?
I will say that I mean, it depends on the guest, right? I mean, we had a wide range of people that went in, but I will say that the cheapest bottles of wine on the menu almost never sold. So I think people wanted to have an experience, and they would, be willing to pay a little bit more for something that is good. But we also had 4 sommeliers on staff, and we never tried to push our guests to spending more money. Like, we were really just there to help them find the best wine, with their preference, what their taste is. So I think some people wanted to spend a certain number, but it was very seldom and far in between those people. It was really just like, I want to try something new. This is what I'm comfortable with. And people at Spago in particular were serious wine drinkers a lot of the time. So they either wanted those labels and they wanted those brands, which were usually very, very good wines with a lot of history. But then also on the other side, we had people who were looking for those Easter eggs or things that they haven't had before, or those like super rare things. And
Yeah, I was in a really interesting situation where, at Morel, the wine bar was right next door to the retail shop. And the retail shop, the average bottle that walked out of there was $180,
Wow.
with at least 2 bottles going out at a time. That's the average price point that walked out.
I'm breaking in. This is a New York high-end retail shop for wine, right?
Yes, one of the original retailers in New York City. And they could take those 2 bottles, I would grab them and serve it to them. And it was an interesting, study to see how far like someone would go to really enjoy a bottle of wine. And generally speaking, there was always an average of like, I would say 300 to 500, retail pricing of bottles that would walk over, and they just wanted to explore it. They wanted to feel something. But at the same time, if they were to dine at the wine bar, if they said they really wanted to impress, they were very open and upfront with what their budget was and how many bottles they wanted for us to procure for the evening.
Anna, you bring up a good point about comparisons around art and comparisons of things that are subjective as well as things that have a high degree of connoisseurship, collectorship, right? Where most of the people who buy something for their house, that art they want to buy, they're like, oh, I'll spend $500 here, or maybe $100 here for this thing on my over my kitchen countertop. And then there's the connoisseurs that will just spend obviously hundreds of thousands or millions, right? And they seem far away, right? But when it comes to wine, people who go into restaurants and there is like the up closeness of the collector book that you can flip through, that regular, quote unquote, regular people like me, like myself, can't afford those things, right? They're like, what is that, and why is that bottle 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, whatever it is, right? And that's the point at which the average consumer starts asking, like, is it 10 times, is it 100 times better? And then there is that sort of snide, like snobism, right? Whatever that word's called, right? Where because we're much closer to the collector side of the high-end wine market that is used to paying this, that is used to collecting, that is used to having shelling out these stratospheric prices, that the industry gets imbued with a sense of, emperor has no clothes potentially, right? And I'm just wondering how you guys think, if you guys agree with me, or if you think that there's something interesting to tease out around that concept.
I have some thoughts on that. I started at Spago when I was 21, and I really had no idea what I was tasting at the time, when, because just being introduced to these labels and tasting 100 wines a day and all of this, all of these great producers and these great vintages, and it was really amazing. But I feel like for some people, being able to have an experience that they haven't had before, so like having this elusive vintage or having this special thing, it does make sense for them financially. Like some people will pay $10,000 for a chair.
Right.
And for somebody who wants to have a unique once in a lifetime experience, and the first moment that I actually understood that, because I have never been a person who likes luxury goods, and I still, having this conversation, I don't even see it as a luxury good. I don't see wine that way. But I had this 61 Margaux, which is like just one of the best wines in France from a really, really great year. And I actually started crying.
Aw.
I actually started crying. And for someone who didn't like Bordeaux, that was a moment that I said, okay, I get it. And for people wanting to have that moment, because I never thought that that's how I would feel. And if you're listening and thinking, wow, that's really weird. But if you've ever had like your favorite food and having it for the first time, like for some people, they will pay a lot of money for that. And I don't blame them, because as sommeliers, we get to taste a lot of really cool stuff. And other people that work in different industries don't get to do that. So, I mean, no shade to anybody who wants to spend whatever. And also, I don't mind if somebody wants to spend $10 on a bottle of wine. I do that too,
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like, if we were to cross this into the fashion world, you go to a fashion show, you see the designers strut their stuff at the end of the show, you know who they are. We forget oftentimes that behind wine, there are people and talent that go behind this, and they're not exactly strutting their stuff anywhere, and oftentimes you don't even get to meet them. And this is probably the most that we'll ever get to know people, because it's like we have Zoom, we're Zooming 5 times a day, and we're getting to meet the winemakers, we're meeting the faces. The reason why, there's these prices at times is because we forget that there's really talented and experienced people who are producing emotional art that we get to ingest.
I love that term, emotional art. And Anna-Christina, you kind of are segueing us perfectly into the next kind of section of our conversation. I wanted to bring up the Great Divide, and we've touched on this a little bit. Cristie, maybe I'll address this to you. The median salary of a sommelier is approximately $60,000 a year. And yet we're talking in this conversation about wines that are, 1,000 plus a bottle. And in order to get to that next level in your profession, in your field, you have to become an expert in these items that we, those of us who work in the industry really can't afford. So how do you bridge that gap in your mind?
You need to work somewhere that opens a lot of great wine all the time. That's it. You need to work at a place that people bring in their wine that they've been saving for 20 years, because you'll proof them. We don't drink them, but we'll taste it to make sure it's sound for the guests, because that's a service that we provide. It's not because we want to drink your wine. But you need to be at a place where, you're practicing a lot, and you're tasting, and you want to be around mentors and people who We'll show you kind of what has been classic, what are the new things that are happening, and being in these conversations, so that you have a well-rounded education. Because, you know, if you're only working with super high-end luxury wines, then you won't know what's on the shelves at the grocery store either. So it's really important for everybody to go out to their local Trader Joe's or wherever you're at and go buy wine from there too, you know?
Cristie, I 100% agree with you. I had an interesting beginning at Morale where, we had 100 wines by the glass, and that was cool because you could taste anything by the glass. And Roberta Morale herself said to me when I asked her, what do I do with all the other stuff I haven't tasted? And she goes, honey, fake it till you make it. And just open the bottle, taste it, you get your little somm pour and understand what that means. Save whatever taste you have, take notes, and educate yourself. And at the same time, it's up to you to build your knowledge base. And so for quite some time, should it be just shelling it out of my pocket or sharing that cost with multiple people just to get a taste? We do what we need to do to understand what some of these wines taste like, and creating an open rapport with collectors or people or connoisseurs who enjoy this level of wine is important, because they can also help guide your journey in that. And a lot of people are super generous out there who sometimes say they have no one to share these bottles with. So it's a joy and pleasure for them to open the bottles with somms.
You bring up, I think all of us have, Catherine and Anna, you bring up something that I was, my background's more on the retail side versus restaurants. At that point, when I'm selling or buying for a retailer, like you recall, like, yes, like it's 750, it is 750 milliliters, right? You can chip in. And if everybody wants to have that experience, like you can have 5, 6, 7, 8 people try, use the power of the fact that the bottle can be shared to get to experience those things. But then at the same time, not everybody wants to do that. And I gotta say, you know what, Cristie, I love the fact that you bring up the grocery example, where it's not just about luxury, but you have a grounded sense of what is, and not just grounded openness to say, I'm comfortable drinking and selling something that's $10, $20, $30 as I am something with, triple, quadruple, 100 times the price tag. I think that people might be more open to accepting the luxuriness portion of wine, the Veblen good of wine, that sort of stratospheric aspect, if they know that two of the greatest sommeliers in the country right now, Anna-Christina and Cristie Norman, are basically also accepting and saying, it's okay to not always inhabit that space, to know that art or furniture or cars or whatever it is that we consume has the full scale down from the lowest one all the way up to the stratospheric one. It gives us permission to dream, but also to stay grounded in what we drink on an everyday basis. So thanks to both of you for bringing that color to the conversation.
Well, I mean, if you like really expensive luxury chairs, you still got to sit in a chair every once in a while, right? I mean, I had the last time I went to a bar before the pandemic happened, I had a Pinot Grigio for like $5 or something at the bar. And for tasting group, I'll pour a $8 Malbec from Argentina, right? Because these are classic things that all sommeliers should taste. And, even more than that, I have 11 somms split each bottle of wine. So it's as cost effective as possible, because it can be expensive if you're just doing it by yourself. But if you're with a group of somms and you're studying together and forming a community, then you can really, really split the cost and make it effective, and people can use their resources to pool different things. So,
this is all making me think about episode 77 when we had Elle Simone Scott on, and she was talking about the irony of being on SNAP, or federal food assistance, while going through culinary school to be a high-end chef. It sounds like you just kind of have to be scrappy and resourceful and figure out how to find those wines that you can taste. And it probably helps to be in a big city like New York, where you can get access to those wines through your job. But now we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor. We will be right back with more of this fascinating conversation about the financial realities of the luxury market. Hey, if there is one Willamette Valley varietal that is really the superstar these days, I think it's Chardonnay. And Rachel and I are going to taste some Grand Moraine Chardonnay right now, thanks to our sponsor, Grand Moraine. This is the 2018 Grand Moraine Yamhill Carlton Oregon Chardonnay that we're tasting here. What do you think about this wine, Rachel? As she takes a sip.
I think this wine is great. It's perfectly balanced. It's bright, it's fresh, but still has all that richness that Chardonnay lovers like. I think everyone would like it.
I agree. It's like a little bit austere and then a little bit rich. It's got a little bit of everything going on. And it's from the 2018 vintage. Now, that summer was one of the hottest and driest on record for the Willamette Valley. But despite the uncharacteristically warm growing season, this wine really is balanced with elegant fruit and vibrant acidity. This is an estate wine from the Grand Moraine Vineyard, located on the west end of the Yamhill Carlton AVA. And I looked up the vinification on this wine. It's quite interesting. The process kind of proceeded in the opposite order of what you typically see, with a lengthy, spontaneous fermentation happening in mostly neutral oak barrels for up to 13 months, with weekly lees stirring for 8 of those months to make that wine smooth on the palate. And then after about 16 and a half months in barrel, the wine was fully racked to an outdoor stainless steel tank and left to mature in the cold Northwest winter. So it fermented in barrel and then aged in steel. Grand Moraine has emerged as a thought leader in the evolution of the Willamette Valley's next frontier, Chardonnay, and I think this innovative winemaking technique is emblematic of that. This wine really shows how Grand Moraine's Chardonnays stand for the region's potential for this varietal. But hey, you've got to try this delicious Chard for yourself. If you're in the Portland area, make an appointment to taste at the spectacular Grand Moraine Tasting Room in the heart of the Willamette Valley in the town of Yamhill. Or have Grand Moraine delivered to your home with free shipping when you use the promo code FOURTOP. That's FOURTOP. Go to grandmoraine.com to purchase your wine online. Enter the promo code FOURTOP and shipping is on the house. Thank you so much, Grand Moraine. Welcome back, everyone. We are going to finish up this episode with the end of this topic we're calling Time for a Reckoning. Martine, the year of the pandemic was one of pronounced economic inequality, of food insecurity, and of profound suffering, in fact. I'm curious to hear how you felt about working in a luxury industry during this time. Did you feel conflicted about what you do?
No, I certainly did. And in the sense that, we do inhabit this place where our day to day is experiencing a beverage that can cost, as we know, stratospherically. And even in the non-stratospheric area, if it's $50, $60, $100 for a bottle, a normal, regular, quote unquote, mid-tier luxury bottle, that's still, for some people, cognitive dissonance about what they're willing to spend for a beverage that they don't need, whether it's water, milk, etc. So I did feel a little bit like that. And all of us are seduced by the best parts of our work, whether you're a restaurateur, a retailer, educator, writer, where we experience these wines as part of our day to day. And yet we celebrate champagne. I got a shirt that says, "But first champagne," before anything, right? It's kind of a tongue in cheek thing, but at the same time, I think everybody on this podcast, Anna and Cristie and Catherine would say that sounds like an awesome slogan. But if you are outside of in the quote unquote real world and you're sitting there trying to pay your rent or your mortgage and you've reduced your hours, you're furloughed, or there's societal reckonings and points of inflection around all these kinds of topics that have nothing to do with the enjoyment of wine, but that are real life hardships. It did feel certainly like, to me, myself, a cognitive dissonance around that expression and experience of wine hitting the brick wall of the hardships that we all faced differently, and some of us faced more than others. And I do acknowledge that, definitely.
Part of our jobs too is having a presence on Instagram, and I feel like every once in a while, it makes sense to post a picture of yourself holding an amazing bottle of champagne, kind of like what you're saying with the t-shirt, Martine. It's an awkward balance, isn't it? I mean, how did you all kind of come to terms with what would make sense to post and what you felt comfortable with? Because I think given your work as high-end sommeliers, you have to be posting yourself tasting crazy good wines, right?
I personally didn't really post a lot of crazy high-end wines throughout the pandemic. One, I wasn't around them all the time like I was before, but two, I just don't feel like it's a good thing to do. Just like I didn't really post vacation photos, or I didn't really leave the house for 8 or 9 months. And if I had gone somewhere, I probably wouldn't post it because, there's a lot of people in other situations. I live by myself, but, there's people that really can't go out or do anything. And I personally just didn't post a lot of that stuff during the pandemic. I don't know. What about you?
Well, it was odd. I mean, yes, dealing with high-end wines all the time, and then suddenly, being let go and then having to pay New York City rent on a 240 square foot apartment sucked. And yet I had to still keep face, especially with collectors who are still asking me for wines. I think we forget that, especially on social media, this is your space to share your joy. And if that moment shared, you had joy, then great, and if people can't deal with that, well, then, maybe you'll find joy for you later on. But, sometimes not posting also protects your joy. When I started a new career, it was a sensitive place where even others who were getting vaccinated were getting hated on. And I said, you know what? I'm going to just protect my own joy and keep my win to myself because this is mine. And I don't want anyone to take this away from me. And it was a very personal space. It was a lonely space. And there would be some friends who would say, well, why don't you just post something? And I said, you know what? Maybe not now. So I think it's just a matter of, you'll know when it's right and if you really want to share it or not. And if you already are having second thoughts, probably don't do it.
I feel like it's been this past year and a half has been just really, I've just been spending a lot of time just kind of questioning, why am I in this industry again and what's important to me? But I think all of you have done a lot of work to kind of focus on the issues that are important to you in the wine industry and put a lot of energy into that. So that must be kind of a way to find some peace with that for all of you.
That's true. It's probably worth mentioning that Anna is a mentor within the organization that I co-founded called Wine Unify, that empowers underrepresented people of color, minorities, whatever term you want to use, and that started on June 1st. We didn't. The pandemic didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened during these lurches and convulsions in society, right? That also affected ethnicity, race, culture, all kinds of things. And then Cristie should be mentioned as well. She founded United Som Foundation, which also went proportionally to the restaurant hospitality side. That, well, she can speak to it all she wants, and you guys should definitely check out what she's created along with Chris Blanchard, and it's taken on a life of its own. So I think within that context, we collectively, not just wine, but also globally, and in particular in the U.S., I think we started paying attention to our conscience a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We started thinking about questions that, and within the wine industry, questions that mattered more beyond just the price and just the quality and possibly just the experience, and how the intersect between our societal evolution and the things that we did on a daily basis as wine pros merged. And sometimes there was conflict or a little bit of chafing, and sometimes there was self-affirmation, right? That there's certain people who normally don't get to see the light of day as wine pros and voices got to experience a bit more of the spotlight on them, on us, right? So on the one hand, we can potentially mock luxury wine for its trappings and for its stereotypes, like you said, Catherine. On the other hand, we could celebrate those instances in which we can diversify and make more colorful the wine world outside of the tropisms of who drinks what at what price.
Yeah. And, the fact that you all work with these high-end wines and these collectors means that you kind of have access to a lot of power and you can wield that power for good. There's a wonderful article in the LA Times that we will post in our social feed about how Cristie organized a group of sommeliers to basically save a restaurant that was about to go under.
Basically, what we did was we had people that signed up to support this restaurant, and we had leaders sign up for every single week. And so we had 3 to 4 leaders every week for 8 weeks. And they asked the people in their personal network. So we had a form that they would submit when they asked somebody to go. And it didn't mean that the person actually goes and dines at the restaurant, but it's like putting a sign up. And, collectively over 8 weeks, we asked 425 people in our personal networks to go to the restaurant. And then we also got donations from our Somm community, $20 here and there from 300 people. It could add up to a lot. And so, of course, we had a fraction of that, but we did a gift card giveaway for $1,000 to the restaurant that doubled their Instagram following in 24 hours, right? So this was just the power of a very small number of people. Super proud of them. It was awesome to lead all of them. Some of them hadn't even gone to the restaurant before. But, since the last year, I've been raising money for sommeliers to support sommeliers in need, and that's really been my full-time job. You can't be looking at the country as a whole without also looking at your backyard too. And I knew that a small group of people with a small amount of effort could make a huge difference. And it's actually airing on the news right now, like right at this moment.
What? Yeah. I hope you're TiVoing that.
It's awesome.
Oh yeah, I'm sure my mom will send it to me. It's all good.
I love what you're all doing, and I love that there is a way to bring positivity to this luxury business we're all in. I was feeling really kind of conflicted during the pandemic, and you're all making me feel very hopeful and really proud of the industry I'm in. So thank you. I think it's time to wrap things up, unfortunately, but we do still have our dessert course or our dessert wine course where we each go around and just share something fun we've been enjoying this week. I'll go first. I am enjoying this Statera Petnat from the Willamette Valley. It's the 2020 Chardonnay, and it's a wine that the winemaker had to kind of work around the fires here. And it's low alcohol and bubbly, and it's really helping with my allergies. So that's what I'm enjoying this week. Would anyone else like to share something they've been enjoying this week?
I'd like to share something that's not wine or beverage. I have been reading a book called Who Moved My Cheese? I've read it for the third or fourth time this week. But if you're making a big decision, I'm actually moving right now, and it's a really, really great reminder for someone that maybe has a big life change or something happened and that didn't go quite as you planned it would, or something like that. It's a really awesome book. It's a little fable, but it's about a 30-minute read. But I reread it all the time because the lessons are so awesome.
Wow, I love that recommendation for all of us who are contemplating changing our career within the wine industry or leaving the wine industry. I definitely need to check that out. Thank you, Cristie. Anna, how about you? Is there anything you'd like to share with us for dessert this week?
I have two things, in fact. So, enjoying a bottle of Planeta Santa Cecilia 2016 from the Noto region of Sicily. This is all beautiful and stunning Nero d'Avola, made from the hands of Patricia Toth, their winemaker, women power there. And listening to her, you are just completely left in a trance and realize her strength and just her wisdom, and you want to listen to her the entire time. And it's inspiration like that that just makes you want to just keep on going. And the second part is everyone has that in them. Let me remind everyone that. And have someone in your corner, have a mentor. Wine Unify is a great example of that. Or get a life coach to help realize your dreams. One thing that I've learned through Sommation is that there's this beauty in everyone, and release it. This is the time to do it.
I just discovered this relatively new, not super new place in Napa called Le Paris. It's a bakery, coffee shop, patisserie. It started in American Canyon, just south of Napa, by a Filipino gentleman who went to the Cordon Bleu, and then he came and he created a patisserie place in American Canyon, and it became so popular. People from Napa were driving down to AmCan as we know it, and it just opened up earlier this year in Napa, and I just had that one time I had it fresh. Pain au chocolat, croissants, and all kinds of yumminess with a friend of mine, Marbu Mark, who was a winemaker at Italics. And there's all kinds of beautiful, colorful, expressive, innovative pastry, desserts, and so forth. And of course, the pain au chocolat, which I always talk about, and I will continue to talk about.
Yum. I love that. Always love a good pastry. So, Martine, I also wanted to ask you, what did you think of tonight's conversation? I came into it feeling a little sort of a little dejected about the industry I work in, but I'm now feeling really upbeat and positive. How about you?
Yeah, Catherine, I was listening to both Cristie and Anna, and I think one of the most powerful things that came out of this, because we never know where the conversation is going to go, right? Luxury and wine, tone deafness, and and cognitive dissonance, and all of these things. And wine has a struggle to bridge the gap of feeling like it can be approached by the normal person in normal circumstances and normal history. We were and continue to be in an abnormal history and time where all of these things, challenges, obstacles, and everything are reshaping what we consider as appropriate, what we consider as meaningful, and what we consider as special, and what we consider as what is really valued. And we take a step back and say, well, maybe what I thought was important to me last year and the year before is not so important again. And so wine inhabits that space where you can easily poke at it, right? Those on the outside of the luxury space, those on the outside of being able to afford the bottles that we talked about. And yet there is a fascinating thing that happened as I listened to Cristie and Anna about this humanizing aspect of the fact that wine can also be a vehicle for uplifting, for an experience where you buy that, you splurge not because you can, but sometimes because you feel like you ought to. And you feel like there's that specialness, there's that moment in which you and your friend, you and your partner, you and your group of community, friends, family, whatever you say when you go to a tasting or a restaurant, that you feel alive again. That sometimes you're cooped up and you feel like this moment, let's splurge a little bit. Maybe we put a little bit of extra oomph in that special bottle that transports you, like Cristie said, like Anna said, to that person, to that site, to that vineyard, to that emotion, to that intent that was bottled up and brought to you just from that place in France or Italy or Spain or Napa or Sonoma or Lodi, right? Where the luxury actually helped, not the luxury, but really the experience of that special bottle takes you to a place that's outside of your living room for the past year and change, right? And then there's a second level that was really cool, that both of these people, individuals who are deeply respected, high-powered, impactful sommeliers and stewards of wine, in one in New York and one in California and then in Nevada, of course, that they couldn't help but say, yes, we're experienced drinking these stratospheric wines and comfortable talking about luxury, but I'm also comfortable talking about inexpensive wines. And beyond that, I'm comfortable actually bringing it home and saying we are also trying to help our community, whether that community is the actual restaurant trade, all of them from top to bottom that deserve to be supported during the challenging times. And if I have the power, I'm going to wield it, like Cristie or Anna, for good, to save a restaurant, right? To save the human side that is often left behind. And then, therefore, I want to say to people who are listening that it's not just about luxury wine. It's not just about money and privilege or prestige. We who inhabit this space, some of us through levers or through different points of influence, can also do good, not just do well. And that's important for us to stop and think that there is beauty and benefit, and there is still, in the greatest reaches of the wine community, a kinship and a friendship and a humanizing aspect that was captured in full essence between our Anna and Christina and you, and just our conversation tonight. I was blessed listening to them speak.
I agree. And I was reminded that I too have cried over a wine before. It really is an emotional experience. And sometimes we get away from that when we think about prices and the business of it. And I think you're right. You're all right that, as long as we believe in what we're doing, and also we can find a way to serve others through our work. It's valuable work and it's important work. So we just have to keep that in mind. And I will keep that in mind as a consumer, and I hope all our listeners will as well. Not only enjoy those wonderful wines, but look at what those wine producers are doing in terms of giving back to the community, and be selective. And, if it's an expensive wine, just make sure you support a wine producer who's really giving back. Thank you, fabulous panelists, Anna-Christina Cabrales on Instagram at Anna-Christina722, and Cristie Norman on Instagram at Cristie Norman. That's Cristie Norman _Somm. That's SOMM. And co-host Martin Reyes, whom you can find on Instagram at reyeswine.mw. And I'm Catherine Cole, otherwise known as K. Cole Uncorked. I'm here in the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, with our audio supervisor, Keelan King. I am in my kid's closet. Fortunately, Keelan is not. It would be too small in here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And hey, we want to hear what you think about the luxury market in wine, so please visit theforetop.org, where you can find our social media handles. Please subscribe to The Foretop on your favorite podcast app and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts so others can find us. Thanks so much, and good night.
This has been the Foretop Podcast. Catherine Cole is our executive producer, Izzy Kramer is our senior producer, and I'm Keelan King, sound supervisor. We are also assisted by audio editor, Michelle Richards, our production assistant, Rachel Grossman, and our social media assistants, Lex Rule and Nick Toole. Please visit our website, theforetop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, reach out to us on social media, and purchase books written by our amazing panelists. And if you have not already subscribed to The Foretop on iTunes, NPR One, or Spotify, please do so and leave us a rating. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you still there? Oh, well, if you're still listening, then I need to tell you something. I need to tell you about the fabulous swag over at sparklingwineanytime.com. Sparkling Wine Anytime is, of course, your favorite new book about all things bubbly, but it is also a wonderful website designed by our team, Lex and Rachel. And we have gifts and goodies galore for you. We have sparkling wine-themed beach towels, teas, cocktail napkins, fancy wine flasks, adorable tote bags, and more. And guess what? Your purchase will help to support a favorite cause of ours, Ahivoy, that's AHIVOY, check it out, which provides education and career training to vineyard stewards in the Willamette Valley. So it's a win-win for everyone, and who doesn't love sparkling wine anytime? Please head to sparklingwineanytime.com. We would love to see you there. Thanks. We love you all. You're wonderful. Kiss, kiss.